He was a disgusting insult who watched Brain rot TikToks, but one day everything changes when he gets transported to another world with cheat skills, which make him the strongest mage that ever existed. Taichi was an above-average guy attending high school in modern-day Japan who had the IQ of a rice cooker and believed that Jake Paul defeated Mike Tyson fairly. Even though he was a total NPC bot, he thought that he was the main character of the story just because he had a childhood friend named Rin with mommy milkers. One day, when he was walking back from school with Rin, he suddenly realized that a weird magic circle had appeared beneath him. This absolute inbred dipshit decides to push Rin into the circle thinking it would lead her back to the kitchen. But Rin grabs onto this numbskull while they both get transported to an alternate world. Once there, Taichi opens his eyes and finds himself laying in Green Plains. He finds Rin laying in the distance and wakes up before wondering where they were. They check their phones and notice that they ain't getting any signals or internet. They wonder what kind of backwater place doesn't have a mobile network nowadays, and Taichi thinks that they might not even be on Earth. He says that the magical circle that they saw before arriving here wasn't some sort of CGI effect, and all this is definitely real. Rin says that it's not possible, but then they hear the voice of a giant monster which looks like a massive black stallion with monstrous horns and eyes. The horse jumps over them, but Taichi grabs Rin and dodges sideways just in time to not get squashed. He tells Rin to run and get away from him as far as possible, because it's better for one to die here instead of both of them, and then rushes forward to taunt the massive beast to get its attention. He calls the big monster a cotton picker and asks if its massive schlong was just for show before making it chase after him. It looks like this is the end for him, but just then an airblade attack comes from the side and hits the monster in the neck. A brown baldy suddenly comes out from nowhere and compliments Taichi on his taunting skills before charging ahead to strike the horse with his sword. The monster fights back by spewing flames from its mouth, but then a black magic-infused arrow flies out of a bush and hits the beast in its leg. After that, an ugly loser walks out of the bush and says that these obsidian horses are really tough, and that using a mithril arrow was the right call. Finally, Small Mage finishes the hunt by burning the monster with a flame attack. The group introduces themselves as Barada, Reculta, and Magilla, and says that they are part of the Adventurers Guild and were hired to hunt these obsidian horses to cull the number of monsters in this area. Seeing all this, Taichi confirms that they are in a fantasy RPG-like world, and they will have to find a way to survive here. Later that night, they all sit down around a campfire and the adventurers ask them where they were from and what they were doing there. They notice that Taichi and Rin aren't comfortable sharing this information and try to ease them up by saying that they won't abandon them in these dangerous plains and would escort them to the nearest town called Asbyre because helping others is part of their job. They also advise them that traveling without weapons is dangerous, especially in this area, as the number of monsters is on the rise and they have received multiple reports about wagons getting attacked and people disappearing in recent times. With that, they all call it a night, and Barada tells Taichi to make up with Rin, who seems to be mad at him for telling her to run away without him earlier. They talk about it overnight and ultimately patch up with a fist bump and some off-screen sweaty action. The next morning, they arrive at Asbyre and the adventurers tell them that it is part of the Elistane Magic Kingdom, and they use this town as their base of operation. They also give our protagonists some gold and tell them about the Adventurers Guild, because Taichi decided to become an adventurer, as well because that's what an alpha male would do. At the guild, they fill their admission forms and read the contract and realize that they can somehow read the language of this world. They note that they have been able to talk to the people of this world as well and understand them properly, so there must be some magic at play. After this, the receptionist says that they will go through a small magical aptitude test and brings out a crystal ball and tells them to place their hand on it, because having magic is a must for anyone looking to become an adventurer. Hearing this, they both feel disappointed because they think they don't have any magic, and Rin says that she will go first and places her hand on the ball. To the receptionist's surprise, the crystal ball shows 4 different colors, and she asks Rin just who she was. She then asks Taichi to do the same, and the crystal ball suddenly cracks when he puts his hand over it, and this makes the receptionist cream her pants, and she runs off to tell the guild master about it. After a few moments, she comes back with the guild master, Gerard, and a famous C-rank adventurer named Mura the Golden Fencer. They introduce themselves to the pair and tell them that they can't register them here, and that Mura will escort them somewhere where they will get the necessary advice, and without it, they can't become adventurers. Taichi asks him if this is some kind of scam where they kidnap them and sell their kidneys, but Mura says that does want his organ but not his kidney. She then takes them to an old shack in the forest near the town, and where they meet this hot mommy with big plots called Lemia. She welcomes them in and learns from Mura that the magic measuring device in the guild broke, so they want her to conduct their test. Lemia gives Taichi and Rin some wooden devices and says that she made them and that they would tell their magical capacity and magical strength values. Magical capacity refers to the amount of magical energy one possesses, and magical strength refers to the quality of said magical energy. After stroking her wood with their hands, Teichi and Rin ask what it showed, and Lemia says that their numbers are absolutely out of this world, and from now on they will be her apprentices. At the same time, we see a couple of hooded figures talking to each other in the dark. The beta male Gunnar reports to his alpha male leader and tells him that they managed to successfully sabotage this summoning ritual, but because the caster was too powerful, the spell still got activated. They are sure that some people were summoned from another world, but they don't know where they are now. He further adds that they have cast a wide net and will soon find them, and this makes the leader really happy, and he says that he has high hopes for them. Back at the shack, Lemia reveals that Teichi has a magical capacity of 120,000 and a magical strength of 40,000, while Rin has a magical capacity of 37,000 and a magical strength of 5,000 because she's a woman. She further adds that high-class human knights and royal mages tend to have a magical capacity of over 10,000 and magical strength of 2,000, so both of their numbers are insanely high and they can easily be considered among the strongest beings in this world. Lemia also says that she's the strongest mage in this kingdom, and even she has a magical capacity of 43,000 and magical strength of 6,000, and Myra's capacity and strength are 3,500 and 3,800 respectively. She then tells them that they possess incredible power, but without training they can end up harming themselves and everyone around them, and that's why she wants them to become her apprentice. Besides that, if they master their powers, they will be well above S-ranked adventurers and top royal mages. She then looks at Teichi and says that if he trains properly, he might even be able to wage wars against nations on his own and become a king. And if he does that, he can have all the wealth and women in this world while showing him her massive plots. Rin notices Teichi's rocket rising in his pocket and tries to make him go blind, while Lemia tells Mura that it will be worthwhile training these Gunnars. The next day, Lemia starts the morning by feeding them a massive breakfast and explains the basics of magic. She says that there are two ways of utilizing magic, and those are by casting magical spells and using sorcery. To use magical spells, one must chant special incantations to lend their magical power to the spirits who use it to materialize different spells. On the other hand, a sorcerer makes a master and servant contract with a spirit and makes them do their bidding, which makes it that much stronger than normal magic. She further reveals that there are 4 basic elements including fire, water, earth, and wind. Mages are normally able to use only a single type of element, but in some cases, there are special mages like Mura who can use 2 elements like fire and earth, or herself who can use 3 elements except earth. She then adds that Rin is an even rarer case who can use all 4 elements. On the other hand, they don't know what elements Teichi can use, but Lemia says that until he finds a spirit to form a contract with, she will focus on training his fundamentals. Ash also tells him that in the past, sorcerers have used light, dark, and time-space magic, and if he masters his powers, he will become the strongest mage in the world. After that, they all go to the forest, and Lemia shows Teichi how to focus his magic in his hands to perform physical enhancement. Teichi practices hard to master the technique, and while doing so, he hears a girl's voice telling him good luck. He wonders where it came from, but he seems to be the only one who heard it. Meanwhile, Myra mentors Rin and teaches her the basics of casting spells. She tells her that to cast spells, one needs to have a clear imagination. Rin immediately learns to cast a fire spell and then even modifies it to blue flames by imagining burning gas instead of wood. This surprises Mura a lot because that's the first time she has seen such a flame, and she calls Rin a prodigy. Later that afternoon, Rin comes to check up on Teichi, who feels quite defeated after doing a lot of hand practice. Seeing him like this, she decides to cheer him up, so Teichi decides to give it another shot and tries to focus his magic in his right hand. While doing so, he hears the same childish voice, giving him some tips on how to do it, and this helps him succeed as his hand starts glowing like a light bulb. He asks Rin if she heard the voice and wonders if it's a ghost or something, which makes Rin spooked. After that, they both walk in to have dinner, and Lemia praises them on their progress. She tells Mura to keep looking after Rin and tells Teichi to work on his left hand next and keep practicing until he can perform a full body enhancement. She says that until they find his attribute, this will be his main way of fighting, which suits him quite well being the Giga Chad he is. Later that night, Mira walks up to Lemia and asks her about the 2 newcomers. Lemia says that she will train them to the point where they can fight decently in 3 weeks because they should be able to fend for themselves in the upcoming war. She thought that the troubles of the capital won't bother her so far away, but it looks like things are going to get ugly quite soon. After a few weeks, we see Teichi and Rin taking a physical test to see how far they have come. Teichi fights a bunch of fen wolves while Rin cooks up a horde of rabbit monsters. Teichi is now able to control the amount of magical power he puts in his fists, and Rin is now able to cast basic spells without incantations while using multiple elements at once. While they are at it, Lemia and Mira look over them from a cliff and talk about how strong they have grown in such a short amount of time. Just then, they notice the pair facing an obsidian horse, but unlike their first encounter, now they are much stronger and able to take down the beast pretty easily and have it for dinner. Later that night, they all celebrate Teichi and Rin passing the graduation test, and Lemia tells them that they will be moving to Aspire the next day and taking their first job as adventurers. She also tells them that according to her, they are called the Lost Ones, which are people who come here from other worlds. She says that sometimes it's as a result of an accident, and at others they get summoned by a sorcerer capable of using space-time magic. This makes Teichi and Rin really surprised, and they ask her how she knew that, and she says that their abnormal amount of magic and occasional use of new words gave them away, and that's why she decided to take them as her apprentice, so they don't end up getting used by evil people. As for the reason why they were summoned here, they will have to ask the sorcerer himself, but there are only a few sorcerers capable of using time-space magic in the whole kingdom. Teichi says that that's a good thing as it will narrow down the people they will have to search, and says that they can easily track them down, clear any misunderstandings, and go back to their world. Lemia says that it might be possible but wonders if it would play out as easily. After dinner, Teichi sits down with Rin and they talk about everything that has happened since they came to this world. Teichi says that they will work as adventurers, make good money, and establish themselves, and then use their influence to find the sorcerer who summoned them here and have them send them back to their world. Rin also feels hopeful, and they both call it a night with some off-screen action. After that, Tasti looks at his white hand and wonders if he really has the power to destroy Rin's massive nations, but then he hears the same voice from before which tells him that they will be able to meet soon and that she is looking forward to it. Teichi asks her who she was and what she meant by that, but the voice simply ignores him and flies away while laughing like an annoying bitch. A couple of weeks later, we see Teichi wake up in his bed after having a dream about the same voice. We find out that they moved to Aspire and registered as adventurers before joining up with a group of adventurers who saved them on their first day. Since then, they have been doing minor E-ranked missions and have been slowly growing stronger by learning new things about this world. Rin uses most of her time studying at the library and learns all sorts of things about this world. She learns that this world is called Altia, and the kingdom they are currently in is part of the Western continent and possesses the most advanced magic in the world. With a population of 20 million people, roughly 80% are capable of casting basic magic in this kingdom, and that's why it's considered one of the 3 greatest nations in this world. They also learn that Aspire lies close to the eastern border with the Holy Skatalef Empire and the Garjan Empire, and that's why it has flourished as an important town for trading goods and information. Just then, the waitress comes with their breakfast and gives them a letter from the guild. After reading it, they find out that they have been summoned to the guild by the guild master. They go to see what was up, and the receptionist gives them a special work request to investigate a bar in the slums. Teichi wonders what they could be looking for at Broki Bar, and the guild master explains that recently they have heard rumors about the stolen goods from the wagons being smuggled into the city through the slums. He tells them that they are to look for any information that would help them catch the culprits, and the reward for the mission is 7 silver with bonuses. Teichi asks if it will be alright for them to take a D-ranked mission, and the guild master says that if they can clear it, they will be promoted to D rank. Besides that, this quest has been failed 2 times already, and if they fail it the 3rd time as well, then the guild will have to pay extra fees for their wrong assessment. Teichi calls the short man stingy, but he says that he's sure of their skills because they are Lemia's apprentices and sends them off. With that, Teichi and Rin go to the slums and decide to take it easy till night when the real shady business takes place. While walking through, Rin goes to buy some Malilla fruit, but the price turns out to be twice as much as last week. She wonders if America's inflation took over this world, but the shopkeeper tells her that the wagons transporting goods have been getting attacked recently and everyone is facing shortage of goods. Later that night, Teichi and Rin notice a carrot getting hauled out of the bar's back door, so they walk inside and ask the bartender for some ale. The bartender says that he doesn't carry such weak drinks, but Teichi tells him to sit using his alpha male heki, and they start talking about the rising prices of goods in the town. Teichi says that they are planning on getting into the business as well and are wondering if they can get some information about how it all worked. The bartender says that it's not a business for amateurs, but Teichi calls him a brokey and puts a bag of coins in front of him, asking if he will open his mouth now. Seeing this, the greedy NPCs in the bar get up and try to loot them, but Teichi and Rin wipe the floor with their worthless rears and make them spill the beans. The goons tell them that they were hired by some hooded guy who asked them to deliver the goods from the wagons that were attacked by monsters. They didn't know how the person looked as it was too dark, but they promised good money, so they went with it. The bartender says that he doesn't want their money, and that it's a normal thing for the bar to sell things brought in by these people, so they should stop digging their nose where it doesn't belong. After this, Teichi and Rin walk out and wonder who this mastermind is. Just then, they notice 3 female ninjas following them, so they lure them out and engage in a battle with them. Teichi tries to hold back from sending them all back to the kitchen and ends up knocking one of them down with a heavy punch. Rin also shows that she's not useless and pushes one of them back before letting Teichi put her to sleep with some gender equality as well. After that, they both face the last assassin and ask her if she was ready to surrender, but the first ninja wakes up and throws a smoke bomb and they both escape from the scene, using that leaving their unconscious comrade behind. Teichi says that they were not there to scare them away from the mission and it looked like they were really trying to assassinate them. This makes Rin surprised and they hand the captured ninja over to the guild and ask the guild master to keep her alive. The next morning, Teichi and Rin meet Miura at the tavern, who's waiting there to congratulate them on getting promoted to D-ranked adventurers. She then tells them that she has a special mission and would like them to form a party with her. She explains that the Malila fruits in the northern forest are ready to be harvested, so the farmers have put in a request to catch the robbers and protect their yield. The reward for completing the mission is 500 silver, and it will also help the town recover from inflation. After hearing all of this, the pair instantly agree and they all get on their way to the northern forest. They arrive at the farm in the afternoon and meet up with the 2 NPC farmers and one shady-looking one named Kasim. While shaking his hand, Teichi feels some gay emotions and holds onto his hand for a while before coming back to his senses. After that, they all walk to the fields to see the Malila trees and Rin casts a magic sensing spell on her staff to catch any trace of lingering magic in the area. She eventually comes across a signal which shows her that a massive monster is on its way to the fields and they all take their positions to fight it. After some time, we see a massive ogre with some orcs coming out of the forest and facing the group with their weapons. Being the alpha male in the group, he tells Miura to take care of the 3 small fries and tells Rin to provide support while he takes care of the massive monster himself. He thinks that using level 35 enhancement would be good enough for the job and ends up one-shotting the ogre with a heavy punch to its face. Later that night, Miura sits down with Teichi and Rin and tells them that orcs and ogres ain't normal in this region, so this must be a part of someone's scheme. They decide to lay down a trap for them and show them that they are not to be messed with and call it a day. In the meantime, we see a hooded girl surrounded by a bunch of dead bodies. She uses a spell to suck the life force out of them and says that she is excited to meet the magicians while referring to Teichi and Rin, and then she vanishes away using her invisible cloak. The next morning, we see Gerard opening the assassin's cell and asking her if she has decided to speak up. On the other hand, we see Teichi and the group walking through the farm with Rin using her magic detection spell to locate the robbers. They eventually come across a bunch of footsteps and follow them to find a fire pit that has been recently put out. Rin says that she is detecting the presence of 3 people in the fields up ahead, and they rush forward to catch the 3 robbers red-handed. Teichi, Rin, and Miura step forward and make them surrender, and the 2 NPCs take them to the town guards and turn them over. In the meantime, Kasim thanks Teichi and the others for their help, and Teichi once again holds onto his hand for long. He says that they are really soft unlike the other farmers and asks him what his secret was. Kasim says that he's an overseer, so he doesn't use his hands a lot, but Miura adds that the orcs and ogres weren't common in this region, but somehow Kasim knew about them even though he's just a farmer. After hearing all this, Kasim starts laughing and reveals that he's the one who hired those men to steal the fruits and also the one who hired the magician to lure monsters into the fields. Teichi asks him why he did that, and he says that he did all this to lure the 3 of them here because he needs Teichi's strength to achieve his goal and wanted to test it himself. Just then, the invisible robe lady, Grammy, steps out of her invisibility and surprises Miura from behind. She tells Kasim that he's really quick to run his mouth and says that she's the magician and was acting as Kasim's bodyguard. With that, their battle begins and Miura rushes forward to clash swords with Grammy and asks her why she didn't attack her when she was invisible. She says that assassinating is for cowards and it isn't her style because she loves clashing blades and overpowering her opponents with her own strength. They both strike each other multiple times and get in a power struggle, but then Rin decides to be useful and she shoots a fireball towards Grammy. This makes Grammy jump back and she counters the spell with a wind attack. Rin follows it up by summoning a dust tornado and stuns Grammy for a while to buy some time for Miura to finish her physical enhancement. Grammy strikes through the spell with her sword, but Rin keeps the offense up and attacks her with a water and earth element combined spell. On the other hand, Teichi prepares to fight Kasim and asks him if he is planning on taking him on without any weapons. Kasim says that he would instead have him fight his frost elemental and summons an icy monster besides him. Seeing the beast, Teichi thinks that he can one-shot it with a higher level of physical enhancement, but instead of connecting with it, he simply phases through the elemental. Kasim explains that the beast doesn't have a physical form and can only be defeated with fire magic. But unfortunately for him, he doesn't seem to know how to cast any spells. Teichi tries to attack the monster with his blade, but it doesn't do anything at all. The ice elemental strikes back with some ice magic and Teichi jumps around to dodge the spells. Kasim then takes out the life energy ball that Grammy created last night and feeds it to the monster, which turns it red and gives it a massive power boost. With that, the red elemental charges forward at an insane speed that knocks Teichi back with such force that it makes him bleed from his mouth. Kasim tells him to come with him nicely like a good boy, or else he will capture the girls and tell them the reality behind the birds and the bees story. In the meantime, we see Miura and Rin struggling against Grammy, who sends Miura back with a heavy punch and strikes Rin down as well. Feeling overwhelmed, the two mages decide to ramp up their power output and say that they are already familiar with facing a powerful mage while remembering Lemia. Grammy asks if they were taking her lightly so far, but Mara says that they are just going back to following their main plan, and with that, she enhances herself to level 40 and rushes forward to attack Grammy. They exchange some strikes, but then Rin charges in with a spell blade and surprises Grammy. Grammy jumps back to dodge the attack, but Miura kicks her back forward, and Rin follows up by converting her staff into a sword and forcing Grammy to block it with her sword. After that, she uses the spell blade in her other hand to strike her, and they burn a good chunk of her HP. After that, Rin casts the Dust Tornado spell and mixes gunpowder in it to make it flammable. After that, she lights the spell up with a fireball and blasts Grammy up. Grammy still manages to block most of the damage with her physical enhancement, but Myra takes this chance to strike her down with her fiery blade and puts an end to their fight. After that, they stand in front of her and tell her to surrender, but Grammy gets up while licking her blood like a pervert and says that she would love to fight them again once her wounds heal, and that she would win the next time. Just then, Kasim speaks up and tells the girls to surrender unless they want to see Teichi get pounded by his red elemental. The girls think about it for a while and feel depressed, while Teichi wonders how it ended up like this, and if he wasn't supposed to have the power to destroy nations. While cursing his weakness, he falls unconscious and hears the same voice from before in his dream. They ask him if he wants power, and Teichi says that he wants to be able to bash the stupid-looking guy's face into the ground and make him regret ever messing with them. The voice introduces herself as the wind spirit named Ariel and says that this would be an exception, and as she would be breaking rules, it might feel as painful as death, but if he still wants this power, she will lend it to him. Teichi agrees, and we see him transform into full-on avatar mode as he stands up with a thick, windy aura surrounding him. Kasim makes the red avatar charge at him once again and sends him back flying, but Teichi stands back up and says that tanking that hit felt like a kitten hit him with its paw. The red elemental then launches a flame breath attack towards him, but Teichi unleashes his other Heki and strikes back with a strong wind stream that destroys both the flame attack and the red elemental in one go. Seeing this, Kasim and Grammy start running away. Teichi tries to stop them, but then he feels the pain Ariel told him about and he falls to his knees. Teichi still manages to unleash one last attack before fainting and takes Kasim's right arm out with it, officially making him the most pathetic one-armed anime character. After a few days, we see Teichi waking up in Lemia's house and wondering how he got there. Just then, Lemia walks in and he asks her the question, but then his stomach starts growling and they both head down to have a meal. Teichi ends up eating like Goku, and Lemia tells him that he had exhausted all of his magic in the last battle and was out for a whole week. She explains that normally people replenish their magic overnight, but if they use up all of it, it can put them in a coma-like state for a longer period of time to recover. She tells him that Miura and Rin brought him here when he didn't wake up after a day, and then asks him for the details of what happened in the northern forest. Teichi tells her everything, and she says that Kasim must have used a Crimson Pact on the Frost Elemental. It's a forbidden ritual which uses the life force of beasts and humans, and eating one can bring out an enormous amount of magic far beyond the user's capacity. Teichi says that in that moment he really felt like he was a goner, but then he heard a voice which introduced itself as Ariel and gave him the power to fight back. Hearing this, Lemia becomes really surprised, and she gives us this fine shot of her treasure. She says that now she knows what kind of sorcery Teichi is capable of doing and explains that he's a summoner. Summoners are much like shamans who form a pact with spirits and are granted the rights to perform stronger magics based on their bond. But a key difference between them and summoners is the ability to listen to the spirits. She further adds that in this world, spirits are of the highest order, ranking even higher than dragons who are superior to humans. As such, humans ain't able to see or hear them except for summoners who can command spirits and have them cast spells for them. And because these spells are cast directly by the spirits, they are much stronger than those cast using a medium such as shamans or mages. After learning how his insane raise haki attracted his spirit and made him a summoner, he walks out to get some coffee before meeting up with the girls. He asks the waitress if she knew where they were, but she says that they haven't returned since leaving this morning. Teichi decides to find them himself and walks out, but then he runs into a couple of Discord mods ganging up on a pretty girl. He steps forward and tells them to leave her alone, and the girl uses this chance to free herself and grab Teichi's arm. She acts as if he's her lover and convinces him to play along using her massive plots. One of the Discord mods tries to punch Teichi and tells him to mind his own business, but Teichi dodges back and puts the guy to sleep using a kick to his neck. Seeing this, the other guy freaks out and grabs his buddy, and they go back to their mom's basement. Once they are gone, the girl thanks Teichi for saving her, but he says that she looked like she could handle them herself. He points out that she was able to free herself from their grip and even managed to follow his sudden movements when he stepped back to dodge the attack. Besides that, she didn't seem fazed at all by the fact that he laid a guy down with a single kick. Hearing this, the girl tells him that it's because this is not the first time they have met and mentions that he was quite rough with her on their first meeting. This makes Teichi wonder if she's his sister from Alabama, but then she introduces herself as Anastasia and reveals that she's actually the ninja girl that he knocked out and handed over to the guild. Meanwhile, we see Kasim's boss, who calls himself the Emperor. He praises Kasim for getting all the info he got about Teichi and Rin and says that his arm was a small price to pay for that. He then turns to Grammy and says that she needs some modifications to serve him better and puts a special spell on her hand. He then gives a new side quest to Kasim and tells him that it will just be a small prank and would be a good way for him to feel less salty during the one-armed club. After giving him the mission, we see two girls entering the room asking the Emperor about the carnival. He says that it's about time they started and puts a document in a pile on the table and says that this will be Teichi's invitation to the party. Back in the town, Anastasia reveals that she has joined the guild and is now working on solving the case of smuggled goods. She tells Teichi that her investigation led her to this building, and they both raid the building to find the mastermind behind it. They come across various goons and fight their way through them, to eventually make it to the room where Kasim and his boss were sitting earlier. There, Teichi finds the paper left behind by the Emperor, and reading it makes him really worried. On the other hand, we see Miura and Rin enjoying the nightlife while walking through the town's marketplace and eating some sweets. Rin seems worried about Teichi, but Miura reassures her that he's in good care with Lemia and tells her that they should focus on their mission for now. Just then, they notice getting followed by someone and wonder if they should lure them somewhere without so many people, but then a hooded kid attacks them from behind with a sword. Rin and Miura jump away and tell everyone to get out of there before facing the assassin. Miura charges her sword up and rushes forward to clash their swords while Rin water attack at the boy to clean his stinky face. After that, she prepares a wind tornado spell, but some magicians attack her from the rooftop. Rin cancels her spell and jumps close to Miura to cast a defensive barrier, and they realize that it's a 4 versus 2 battle. But then they hear Grammy's voice from somewhere, who comes out of invisibility and takes Miura down with a surprise attack to her stomach. After that, she picks her up and runs away and tells Rin that it's not her style, but the boss asked for her, so she has no choice. Rin tries to go after her, but the goons keep her busy and Grammy gets out of there. In the meantime, we see Teichi and Anastasia walking through a tunnel made by earth magic and reveal that the paper that they found in the building told them that there was a horde of 3,000 goblins enhanced with crimson packs hiding somewhere here under Aspire. They eventually come across a door at the end of the tunnel with some bones outside it, and Anastasia opens it using her lockpicking skills just in case it was trapped. Seeing her work like this, Teichi says that when he handed her over to the guild, he wished that she would continue her life clean, so now he had mixed feelings about the guild using her for their missions. Hearing these kind words makes Anastasia smile, and she tells him to call her Anna from now on, and they continue their search. Back in the town, Rin blasts away the dumb NPCs trying to stall her and turns around to find Grammy standing behind her. She congratulates her on taking care of them fast and tells her where Mira was. She also tells her that her boss was trying to feed her a crimson packed orb and says that she doesn't care if someone gets Ishikade, but they were her prey and she doesn't appreciate getting it taken by someone else. Hearing all this, Rin rushes to the building where Mira is kept and beats everyone inside to make it to the chamber where she was being held. She knocks the main spellcaster down using a wind spell and freezes everyone else with an ice binding before destroying the magic circle using earth magic and feeling Mira from her chains. Just then, the Emperor walks in alongside Kasim and congratulates Rin on rescuing her friend without slaying anyone in the process. He introduces himself as the mastermind behind all of this, and Rin prepares to fight him, but he says that he's not there to dirty his hands and tells her that a horde of 3,000 monsters is going to attack the town, so there's no point in them fighting because everything will be destroyed once they attack. Hearing this, Rin says Teichi's name, and the Emperor tells her that he won't be coming to save them because they have prepared a different stage for him. So now it's up to them to protect this town, and that you would be looking forward to see how the two of them do it, and walks away. On their way out, Kasim asks the Emperor if attacking the town from inside and outside at the same time was necessary, and he says that it was, and asks him how many Crimson Pact monsters did he prepare in total. Kasim says that they got 500 of them underground and around 200 above ground, and the Emperor says that those should be good enough to test Teichi and Rin's strength in full. Meanwhile, we see Teichi saving Anna from an earth golem by blocking its punch with a single hand. He lets her fall back and then jumps forward with a physically enhanced punch to put the golem down once and for all. After that, a door opens up in front of them and they see a couple of young girls standing over a goblin farm that seem to be enchanted with the red Crimson Pact. The girls introduce themselves as Milo and Mello and say that they are the ones who created the earth golem and are going to release all these goblins in the town so they can play with the townsfolk and have men and children for dinner. Teichi looks at their dumb faces and asks if that doesn't sound like a bad idea to them because they are children as well, but the girls say that they will be controlling the goblins using this orb and unleashes them. Back in the town, Miura and Rin go to the guild and tell Gerard about the Emperor and his plan to attack the town using 3,000 monsters. Gerard calls all the adventurers in Aspire and also asks for help from the town watch, and they prepare to begin the defensive war. With only 180 adventurers at their disposal, things look pretty bad for them, but then Lemia joins the fray and encourages them to battle. In the meantime, Teichi and Anna fight against the red goblins and try to keep them from going above ground. Teichi uses physical enhancement to crush them all, but he fears destroying the cave and switches back to normal combat. While fighting so many goblins, he soon hears the girls' voices and notices that the crystal ball that they had was useless, and the goblins are now attacking them as well. He makes his way through the monsters and saves them and makes them apologize for their actions. He then tells Rin to look after them and goes on a full-on monster hunt to clean all 500 of them underground. Back at the guild, Lemia and the others assess their situation, and Lemia says that she will use one of her tactical class large area spells to thin out the number of monsters because there's no other way for them to fight so many of them at once. But using such a spell early on will leave her mana reserves low and she won't be able to do any big attacks anymore. Hearing all this, Rin tells her to leave the area of effect spell to her and explains that she might be able to cast a spell, which is similar to an erupting volcano. She tries to explain the science behind using steam energy to create a bomb, but it flies over their heads just like math lessons flies over mine, but Lemia says that she trusts her and lets her take care of it. The next morning, as the monsters get close to their walls, Rin starts casting her spell and begins with creating a massive hole in the ground using earth magic. She makes most of the monsters fall in and fills the basin with water before creating a giant ball of molten metal on top of them and tossing it inside. The metal cools down quickly and creates a seal on top of the hole before erupting with great force from all the steam that forms underneath. The huge explosion makes everyone surprised, and Lemia leads the counterattack, with Gerard marching the adventurers into enemy forces. Meanwhile, Kasim and the Emperor look over them from a cliff, and the Emperor says that watching Lemia in action was well worth this on its own, but seeing Rin reveal such a destructive spell was a treat on top. He then says that it's about time they face the real danger, and we see an adventurer report to Gerard that 200 monsters enhanced with Crimson Pact have joined the battle. This makes him really worried, but then they see Teichi arrive at the camp with Anna and the two girls. He fills Gerard in about what happened underground and asks him about Miura and Rin before heading out to help them. On the other hand, we see Miura and Rin getting tired from all the fighting and complimenting Lemia on still being so full of energy. Just then, they notice the massive horde of Crimson Pact monsters, and Lemia tells them to buy her 30 seconds so she can cast a strong spell and take care of them. Miura and Rin rush forward and destroy a bunch of small fries until Lemiev casts the AoE spell and reduces the enemies in front of them to only 3 red ogres, who seem to be leading this army of monsters. The 3 of them take on 1 orc each, but Rin's attack seems too weak to do any damage to the monster, and it walks up to her to deliver the finishing blow. In her final moments, she says that even if she falls here, Teichi will come and save them all, and regrets not telling her about her true feelings for him. But just before the monster can strike her down, Teichi jumps in and blocks it with a single hand and tells her to tell him all about it once they are done with this war. Lemia and Miura soon follow up and tend to Rin while Teichi pushes the red ogre back before grabbing it and tossing it on the ground. He then jumps over it and knocks it out with a heavy punch to its chest. After that, he walks back to meet up with the girls, and Miura asks him what enhancement level he uses, and he tells her that he used level 100 or else he won't be a match for these monsters. Teichi then asks Lemia about their current situation and asks if they will be able to continue fighting, but she says that they would barely be able to hold them back at their current strength. Teichi introduces them to Mayo and Mello, and tells them to keep the monsters from attacking him so he can fight the 3 red ogres, and hopefully, once he defeats them, the monsters would fall back. With that, Teichi challenges the 3 ogres to a battle, and we see Kasim and the Emperor looking at the battle, where the Emperor says that it is all according to what that lady planned, while referring to a secret mastermind who's even above him in this scheme. Back at the camp, we see Anna tending to the injured soldiers while hearing about the situation on the front line. She decides to put her faith in Teichi, but then a hooded figure walks past her and whispers something in her ear, which makes her walk towards the battlefield like a mindless puppet. On the other hand, Lemia and the other adventurers are fighting the small monsters, while Teichi is dealing with the ogres in a 3 versus 1 situation. Despite the difference in their numbers, Teichi manages to knock one of them down and finishes the job thanks to his insane magic power. But then the ground starts shaking and a dragon comes out of the ground and eats the ogres up for breakfast. Seeing the beast, Lemia wonders why it's here, because dragons normally never bother themselves with interfering in battles between lesser species. Everyone gathers around Teichi, and we find out that the twin-headed golden dragon is also part of that mysterious mastermind's plan to test Teichi. Teichi tells Lemia and the others to evacuate the town for the worst-case scenario, and says that he would fight the dragon alone. Rin says that she will stay with him, and Merad tells them to come back alive or else she won't forgive them. With that, they all go back, and Teichi tells Rin to stay back as well, because being a woman, she would only come in his way. Besides that, if the dragon chooses to attack her, he will instinctively try to defend her as the Sigma male that he is, and that would certainly be the reason behind his defeat. Rin says that she understands and focuses on defending herself while finding ways to support Teichi in any way she can from a distance, while Teichi runs forward to face the dragon. On his way, he calls out to Ariel, but she doesn't respond, and he wonders if the first time was just a fluke. Regardless of that, he enhances himself to level 100 and then jumps forward to start the fight with a heavy punch. The dragon blocks the attack with its claw and strikes back with a bunch of fireballs, followed by a tail whip attack. Rin tries to help Teichi, but the dragon's other head shoots a fireball towards her as a warning and tells her to stay back like the waste of space she is. Teichi loses a lot of HP to the tail whip attack and wonders why a dragon was helping the monsters to attack them. Just then, Anna walks up to him and says that she needs to fix his wounds, but Teichi asks why her dumb plots were there, and this snaps Anna back to her senses. She looks around pretty confused and wonders how she got there, but the dragon uses this chance to launch a ball of blue flame towards Teichi. Rin rushes forward to save him, but Anna pushes Teichi to the side and tanks the hit herself. The attack blows her stomach away, and in her final moments she lies in Teichi's arms and apologizes for her mistake. She recounts how he was the only one who saw her as a woman and not a tool, and asks him to become her friend if she manages to survive this, but then breathes her last and dies in his arms. Seeing her pass away makes Teichi really mad, and he starts cursing himself for not taking his powers seriously and training enough. He then calls out to Ariel and says that he knows that she is listening and tells her to give it to him. He lets out a manly roar and tells her to give it to him hard, and Ariel responds to his call and says that this was the kind of strong emotion that she was looking for from him. Teichi suddenly finds himself in a plane where he talks to Ariel, and she apologizes for not being able to give her power to him like before. She tells him that they must form a formal pact first, and to do that the summoner must call out to the spirit and ask for their power, and secondly, they must be willing to accept that power in full. After learning about this, Teichi says sorry for shouting at her, and they make the pact. With this, Teichi becomes a full-fledged summoner and comes back to his senses in the real world with this newfound power. He tells Rin to take care of Anna's body and then walks up to the dragon while telling Ariel that they will settle it with one blow. Seeing him, the dragon commends his courage, and Teichi asks the dragon about its goal and what would it take for it to withdraw from this war. The dragon tells him that if he shows it his true power, it will answer all his questions and leave this place. After that, it launches a combined flame breath attack from both its mouths, and Teichi counters it with a strong wind stream attack using his fist. At first, they both seem equal in power, but Teichi soon overpowers the beast and tosses it on the ground. After this, the dragon says that it's happy to see his strength and reveals that it serves a certain lady, and his goal was to test his true strength. He also tells him that from now on that lady would continue guiding him, but this is necessary for this country and this world, and then flies off into the distance before telling him to be strong if he wishes to protect those that he treasures. On the other hand, we see Emperor reporting to the mysterious lady alongside another hooded servant, and he tells her that Teichi has formed a pact with the wind spirit. The lady says that then it's time to prepare his next guidance, and that after a town comes a country. After the war, Aspire slowly starts rebuilding, but despite their victory, they suffered great losses, and we see Teichi putting some flowers on Anna's grave and telling her to watch over him from the heavens. After that, he goes to see Lemia and the others and introduces them to Ariel by summoning her in her mini form. While talking about it, they notice a carriage coming into the town with an escort of knights, and Lemia notes that they bear the royal family's crest. The carriage eventually stops near Lemia's house, and a purple-haired girl named Alcina walks out of it and introduces herself as the daughter of Marquis Norman and announces that she is there on behalf of King Gilmar. She says that she is there to ask them for their help and requests them to come to the royal capital when they fix with her. On their way, Lemia tells Alcina to explain the current situation of the country, and she tells them that for the last 30 years, the country has been governed by two factions, one supporting the current king and the other supporting his younger brother, Duke Dordsheim. King Gilmar gained his current position through diplomacy and by proactively reaching out to the other nations, while Duke Dordsheim is more of a conservative. According to one of King Gilmar's policies, they have sent out some of their mages to other nations, and this can affect their dominance on the map as the Magic Kingdom. The opposition has finally decided to take up arms against them, and a rebellion war is just around the corner, and they are hoping for them to help them in this battle. With that, they arrive at the capital, and Teichi notices that the place is practically a ghost town. Lemia asks Alcina if the king said anything about Teichi and Rin, and she says that he insisted on bringing them along. Just then, an arrow flies towards her, but Teichi grabs it mid-air like a Giga-Chat and saves her life. We find out that it was shot by one of the Duke's men, who reports to him about the arrival of the Otherworlders in the capital. Back at the castle, Teichi and everyone else walks into the courtroom, and Alcina introduces them to the head mage, Bella, the supreme commander of their army, General Sumela, and the only daughter of the king, Princess Charlotte. Just then, the king walks in as well and commends them on their efforts in the defense of Aspire. Lemia decides to skip the formalities and asks him what was up. The king tells everyone else to leave them alone and then tells Lemia that she hasn't changed at all. It looks like they are old friends, and Lemia tells him that she will lend him a hand, but only if he agrees to her conditions. She then says that they will return to Aspire for now, and she also wants him to honestly tell them if he's the one behind summoning Teichi and Rin to this world. The king decides to bite the bullet and says that he is indeed the one who ordered for them to be summoned. Hearing this, Teichi steps forward and asks them how he could take their peaceful lives away and summon them here to slay people for him, and Mira protests in their favor as well. Gilmar says that he will take full responsibility, and then they all go to their rooms. Lemia and Mira go to talk to the generals, and Teichi and Rin talk about this new revelation. Just then, Alcina knocks on their door and says that the princess wants to talk to them. With that, Charlotte walks in and apologizes to them for the inconvenience and reveals that she's the one who summoned them to this world. She explains that she conducted a lot of research before casting the spell and was torn between summoning someone out of their peaceful life and making them fight for them, but in the end, she decided to do what was expected of her as the princess of this kingdom. She then says that during the summoning, one of Duke's assassins slipped in and it made the spell become unstable. She only wished to summon Teichi, who possessed an insane amount of magic, but due to the assassin's attack, Rin got taken in as well, and instead of getting summoned in the palace, they got teleported to a random field near Aspire. She says that it took her quite a long time to find where they were and apologizes for not only ruining their lives but also being an incompetent waste of space. After hearing all this and seeing her cry, Teichi and Rin tell her to lift her head up and say that they forgive her for everything she did and that they understand the desire to save those that are precious to her. Charlotte says that once the nation is at peace, she will do everything to make sure that she can return them to their worlds, even if it costs her soul, and Teichi says that they will help her in this war so they can all come out of this happy. Just then, Lemia walks in and tells Teichi to come outside. She has him fight Sumela, who wants to see if they were really as strong as the king expects, and Teichi proves his dominance by parrying all her attacks and breaking her sword with an enhanced blade. After that, they both start fighting hand-to-hand, and Teichi manages to knock Sumela down and gets on top of her. This makes her really excited, and she asks him if he would be willing to knock her up as well, and asks him for that special white thing inside his body, making Teichi cry out in disbelief. Later that night, Teichi looks up at the sky with Ariel and talks to her about being afraid of using too much strength against human enemies, but if it means protecting Rin, he would be willing to do it. After that, he goes back inside to check up on Rin and accidentally walks in on her dressing up. On the other hand, we see Charlotte praying in the Holy Temple as the Emperor walks up to her, and we find out that he's called Cardinal Laudra, and Charlotte doesn't know that he is the one behind the attack on Aspire. The next morning, we see Teichi walking around the castle looking for Rin. He eventually finds her watering some flowers and tells her to get her plots up into the courtroom because Lemia wants them to join the meeting with the generals. On the other hand, we see the Duke having a meeting with his generals. Two of the Marquises seem to be having a discussion over making their next move with Marquis Nilgen, suggesting that they assemble their forces and surround the royal capital immediately, while Marquis saying that they should first assess the abilities of these two otherworlders before launching a proper attack. He adds that according to their intel, one of them can even summon spirits and says that they should play their cards right. In the end, the Duke sides with Nilgen and gives him permission to assemble their forces and lead them to the capital. On the other hand, Sumela and Bella report to the king about the Duke's army marching towards Wenifix and tell them that they have 3,000 soldiers ready to deploy with another 6,000 on standby. Bella says that she also has 300 mages ready to fight with another 600 as backup. The king tells them to defend the capital with all their might, and they move to the tactical meeting room where they form a plan to meet with the Duke's forces in the south the next morning, with Teichi and Rin helping them as well. Teichi feels worried about using his powers against humans, but Lemia tells him to grow some balls, and Sumela encourages him with a promise to marry him after the war, making Teichi that much more worried. Later that night, Teichi goes to see Rin, who seems too tense about participating in this war. He tells her that she doesn't have to take part in it because she got there as a mistake, but she tells Teichi that she jumped into the circle of her own free will and that she will fight alongside him. She also tells him to spend the night in her room, and they both sit down together, with Rin resting her head over his shoulder. It looks like Teichi will finally become a man tonight, but as he tries to grab her hand, he notices something and tells her that it's time to call it a night. Meanwhile, we see Miura and Lemia talking about Rin over some tea, and Myra decides to go check up on her, but Lemia notices something while looking outside the window and says that she might have become paranoid as well. After some time, we see a hooded assassin standing outside the window on a tree, and it turns out Marquis sent him to assassinate Teichi and Rin during the night to make a name for himself. Unfortunately for the assassin, Teichi already noticed him earlier and puts some pillows in their bed covered with a blanket. The assassin stabs the pillows, and Teichi and the others catch him red-handed in the room. Teichi starts talking about how he noticed him earlier, but the assassin doesn't care about him, jerking himself off and uses this chance to attack Rin. Seeing this, Teichi immediately turns his physical enhancement on, and he starts pounding him really hard, saying that he won't ever let anyone hurt the people he has sworn to protect. After beating him up for some time, Lemia stops Teichi, saying that's enough, but the assassin slips out from under him and decides to isekai himself by passionately hunting the ground. The next morning, Gilmore's army faces Marquis Nilgen's force consisting of 1,000 soldiers. Teichi begins the war by sending a warning their way using a wind spell and blasting the ground just in front of the enemy forces. They hope that it will make them stop for some time, but to their surprise, Nilgen and his men raise their hands and cast a bunch of fireballs and water bullets using magical rings and strike their army. This confuses them at first, but Teichi uses his cheat abilities to zoom in and tells Lemia about the special rings. She says that those are magical stones and wonders where they got the capital to prepare 1,000 of them for all their men. She then adds that these rings can use up the caster's life force if they run out of magic and continue casting, and it can be lethal if someone without proper understanding of magical items uses it. As expected, Nilgen's army continues using the magic rings and quickly drain themselves out. Seeing them struggle like this makes Gilmore's army happy, and they say that they might not even have to fight back, they just need to defend for long enough and the enemies would put themselves down on their own. This makes Teichi and Rin uncomfortable, and they look at Lemia for a response, and Sumela says that even if they are on the other side, they are part of their kingdom and Gilmore won't want unnecessary casualties either. Lemia says that she might have a plan and asks Rin for help. Teichi puts up a barrier in front of them using Ariel's wind magic, and Myra protects Rin from any stray shots until she prepares a special spell in combination with the other royal mages, and they suddenly make it rain. Rin then uses lightning magic and shocks the enemy forces and makes them fall unconscious. Nilgen feels pretty drained as well, and he gets on his knees, but then he notices the Duke's assistant, Inimicus, walking up to him and telling him what just happened. Nilgen asks him why they were losing, and he tells him about the draining effect of the ring, and then stabs him before telling him that he has served his purpose, and with that, the war comes to an end. Later that night, we see Kasim and Grammy drinking at a bar, and Kasim takes out a small gadget and says that the next time he sees Teichi, he will make him lick the dirt off the floor. The next morning, Rin wakes Teichi up using her special oral skills, but Teichi ends up running to the bathroom due to eating too much Indian food last night. After that, they meet up with Lemia and Miura, who tell them that the king has summoned them all in the courtroom. They all go to see what was up, and the king says that the princess wants to reward them for their achievements in the war and lets them pick up special weapons from the royal collection. Lemia gets a magic ring, Teichi picks up a Japanese-looking katana, Rin chooses a fancy staff, and Miura takes a high-grade dagger for herself. After that, they all go to the training grounds where Sumela asks Teichi to show her his big black sword. Lemia also tests out her magic ring as Sumela gets on top of Teichi and tells him to unload all of his hot passion with his sword onto her. She jerks him around and says that she will take everything he has got, but Teichi still feels sick from overeating last night and ends up fainting. Teichi somehow manages to escape from there and goes to the town to get some medicine. While out, he notices people staring at him and he wonders if they are looking at Ariel, but she says that she made it so only he can see her for now, so the people are actually looking at him. Just then, some kids walk up to him and call him the strong man from the war, and Teichi realizes that he has become somewhat popular among the crowd. He entertains them for a while and then walks into an empty street and calls out the person following him in the shadows. It turns out to be none other than one-armed Kasim, who's feeling salty about Teichi getting all this fame. Teichi asks him what happened to his arm, and when he finds out that he's the one who took it, it makes him feel really sad. Kasim says that he has resolved to beat him and challenges him to a duel on his terms, or else he will poison all the wells in the city. He takes out the gadget he got from Lodra and says that this will put restrictions on Teichi's magic and make it equal to his own. This way they can fight on equal grounds and he can prove that he only lost to him due to his gifts. This obviously sounds like a bad idea, but being the alpha male he is, Teichi says that he can never back off from a fight like this and prove his dominance. This makes Ariel mad and she tells him to not come back crying if his power never returns, and the battle begins. Teichi starts it off using a wind blast, but Kasim dodges it and strikes back using a dagger. Teichi blocks it with his sword and then jumps back to shoot Teichi using ice and water bullets. Teichi rushes forward and knocks his dagger out of his hand, but Kasim gets him with some ice bullets, and the battle becomes intense. Grammy watches them from the corner as they beat the living daylights out of each other. At the end, they both wonder if they should keep fighting until one falls unconscious, but decide on finishing it with her next move instead. Kasim charges up a massive ice spell and prepares to throw it towards Teichi, who seems pretty beat up and unable to dodge it because of his leg injury. Teichi thinks about Rin and his early magic lessons and decides to believe in himself and puts some magic in his sword and uses it to slice through Kasim's ice spell and sends him back flying into the wall from the shockwave. With this, their fight comes to an end and Kasim accepts defeat, but Teichi says that he had at least an extra arm's worth of advantage, so it wasn't as fair. After that, Ariel asks Kasim to return Teichi's magical power, and he tells them to destroy the magical gadget to return everything to normal. But before they can do anything, the dark aura around the gadget forms itself into a shadow monster and starts attacking Teichi. Teichi tries to fight back using wind magic, but it doesn't do any damage to the shadow monster, who strikes him back with a bunch of dark bullets. Things look bad for him, but Grammy suddenly comes out of her invisibility cloak and attacks the monster. Kasim distracts it using his ice magic and tells Grammy to destroy the gadget. But even after destroying it, the monster doesn't disappear, and Kasim wonders if Lauder planned all of this as well. Teichi notices that his powers are back at least, and he says that he will blow the monster away with one attack and tells Ariel to compress the surrounding air to form lighting and strikes the monster away with a lightning slash using his sword. After that, he gives a healing potion to Kasim, but Grammy tells him to stop crushing his pride even more and says that he was just salty about losing to him. But now that they have fought on equal terms, he has accepted his defeat and would probably work hard to get stronger. She then helps him up and walks away with Kasim, who now seems to have developed a healthy rivalry with Teichi. Just then, the city's bell starts ringing and the speaker announces that the Duke's army has declared war. Teichi runs back to the castle to meet up with Rin and everyone else, and they all prepare for the war that's going to start the next day. At the same time, we see Laudra reporting to the mysterious lady about how Teichi dealt with the shadow monster, and she tells him to proceed with their next guidance. We also see the other hooded figure beside them, who looks quite similar to Animicus. The next morning, Duke Dorkesheim addresses his army before marching towards the capital, and Marcus Marquis asks for his permission to deal with the Otherworlders and Lemia on his own, as he has made the necessary arrangements and won't disappoint him like Nilgan. After that, the Duke marches towards the capital and both armies come face to face. He asks Animicus if they have any chance of victory, and he says that Marcus Marquis would take care of everyone other than Teichi, but he will make sure that he's not a problem for himself. On the other hand, Ilma raises his soldiers' morale with a speech and tells them to carve a path to victory for their kingdom as its heroes. With this, the war begins and we see men clashing swords and magical spells getting tossed all over the battlefield. Rin and Miura dominate the battle, with Lemia destroying her opponents by using spells from her new magical ring. But then they all get paired against their matches that Marquis prepared for them, and we see an ranked adventurer named Suzora face Rin. Marquis himself takes on Miura, while a sorcerer named Miss Folo challenges Lemia using his jamming magic to jam all over her using his thick staff. Meanwhile, Teichi uses his wind magic to jump across the enemy forces and lands right in front of the Duke's camp. While they are talking about their battle strategy, he simply walks in and tells the Duke to surrender. Dorshan tells everyone except Inimicus to walk outside, and he talks to Teichi about his proposal. Teichi says that if he tells his men to surrender right now, he will make sure that the king shows him mercy. Otherwise, he has enough power to beat him up and bring his head back to the king himself. Hearing this, Dorshan asks him why he doesn't become a king himself, and Teichi says that it would be too much of a hassle, and he doesn't want to become hated by thousands of people by becoming a dictator who does whatever he wants. Hearing this makes Dorshan laugh, and he says that growing up in a peaceful world can really change a person's view, but then he tells Teichi that it's a matter of pride, and sometimes people with power must go along with their decisions even if it results in their demise. Teichi looks at his dumb face and wonders if he has gone senile like Joe Biden, while we see Inimicus cooking up some dark spell behind everyone's back, which makes everyone in their army drink his dark juice. Back on the battlefield, Lemia faces Miss Folo and asks him if he's just planning on wearing her down. He attacks her using ice magic, but she blocks it by summoning flames from the earth. He then sends out a bunch of ice bullets towards her, but she blocks them using defense magic and shoots him down using a wind blade. This surprises the old mage, and he accepts his defeat and tells Lemia to finish him off, which she does using a massive fireball. At the same time, Mira fights Marcise using her flaming sword, but he knocks it up into the air and thinks that he will get to taste some elf meat tonight, but then she zooms past him and slices his neck using the dagger she picked up from the royal collection. Rin, on the other hand, seems to be having trouble finishing her opponent. Suzura keeps the offense up and forces Rin to play on the defensive. It goes on for some time, but Rin finally finishes analyzing her moves and abilities and prepares to end the battle. She prepares to strike her with a fling spell, but Suzura jumps down and strikes the earth and makes Rin fall back. Rin switches to ice magic and shoots some icicles towards her, but Suzura strikes them all away, only to realize that they were a distraction as she sees Rin on top of her with a massive fireball above her head. Rin shoots it down and takes a huge chunk of Suzura's HP down. But then they notice the fallen soldiers around them acting weird as they surround them like zombies, and Rin tells Suzura to join her if she wants to live, and they team up. Meanwhile, Teichi continues talking to the Duke about surrendering, but then Ariel notices Inimicus' evil spell and she tells Teichi about it. Hearing this, Inimicus starts laughing and says that his spirit would obviously realize it and reveals his true colors as the person who sparked this rebellion and made the Duke go against his own brother. He says that he prepared this battlefield with a spell called Darkness Curse beforehand, which makes everyone in his control go berserk and turn into a slaying machine. He says that he did it all for that lady while referring to the mysterious mastermind, and says that he could care less for this kingdom or their siblings' fight, and that he will turn everything to dust as his master wished. With that, he starts spreading the spell throughout the battlefield and turns into a demon as well. Back on the battlefield, we see Lemia and Bella observing the spell over their heads and explaining that it's the same spell that was used 200 years ago during the battle between their neighboring nations, the Holy Skatalav Empire and the Garjan Empire. While the battle was pretty quick, the fallen soldiers turned into berserking zombies who attacked friends and foes alike. They quickly made their way to the non-combatants as well, and at the end of it all, over 700,000 people lost their lives. This battle went down in history as the Bloody Rhapsody, and until they crush the source of this magic, they won't be able to bring everyone back to their senses. The spell will continue to spread among the living, and they will turn into mindless battle-hungry zombies as well. Things start looking bad for both armies as Lemia and the others get surrounded by hordes of these mindless puppets. They decide to fight back and hope for Teichi to save the day using his plot armor, which takes us back to the Duke's camp, where Teichi unleashes his spirit power and prepares to use a full power attack, which might result in him losing his life. He resolves to use everything this time to save his friends, but just before he can unleash all that power, Ariel stops time and says that she has been lying to him. She apologizes to him and says that she was afraid of her own power and didn't know how it would affect Teichi, and that's why she only appeared in front of him in this semi-original form. She then says that after seeing his resolve, she now believes that he's ready to experience her in her real body, and tells him her real name, which turns out to be Sylphide. After that, time starts flowing back normally, and Rin makes her way to Teichi alongside Suzura and hugs him. Teichi notices that her leg is injured and says that he will end this war now so they can return home. He then raises his hand and calls Sylphie out and uses a special spell to break the Darkness Curse magic circle. This makes everyone really surprised, and Suzura reveals that Sylphide is the name of the Queen of Spirits, and she is considered one of the 4 strongest spirits in the whole universe. With this, everything returns to normal, and Teichi says that he still needs to take care of the one behind all this and prepares to fight Inimicus in his devil form. He then charges up his new power, and they both fly up in the sky to start a Dragon Ball Z-style fight. They clash against each other a couple of times before Taichi asks him about the mysterious lady. Inimicus says that she is the ruler of this world and is the one who planned everything from his birth to his summoning in this world to this day, where he unlocks his true power as a summoner. He reveals that this world is headed towards a massive war, and to protect it, they need an ultimate weapon, and Taichi will become that for them. He further adds that all these battles that he fought so far were part of the lady's plan to make him stronger, and he too is just a mere pawn in her grand scheme. Taichi asks him for her name, but Inimicus says that it's not yet time for him to know that, which makes Taichi really mad, and she says that he won't accept losing friends and so many lives over such a BS excuse. He continues punching the demon and eventually overpowers him as his rage builds up, and he starts pounding him with his punchies until he lands a heavy hit to his stomach and makes him crash down into the ground. He then stands over him, and Inimicus tells him to deliver the finishing blow, as being soft is his only remaining weakness, but Taichi tells him that he left his humanity behind when he accepted this power and evaporates him using a strong lightning attack. With this, the war comes to an end, and we see Taichi waking up in the castle with Rin, Lemia, and Mira by his side. They fill him in on everything since he defeated Inimicus and Alcina, and Charlotte also runs in to ask if he was alright. Apparently he ran out of magic and was asleep for many days, but now he was considered the hero of this kingdom. The king grants them the title of the advisors to the royal army and makes them join their ranks as special forces meant to be summoned when the kingdom is in trouble. Gilmar also puts his brother down for the act of rebellion, and peace returns to the kingdom for the time being. We see Taichi wondering about how he might turn into a monster as well due to this power, but Lemia reassures him that no matter how much power he gains, he will remain a human if his heart is in the right place. She cheers him up, and they all decide to return to Aspire to continue their training. Charlotte and Alcina see them off, and Charlotte promises to find a way to return them to their worlds, and Taichi tells her to take her time because they don't mind spending some time with their new friends in this world either. With that, they get on their way back to Aspire, and Taichi says that he will grow strong enough to never let any of his friends get hurt ever again, while we see the mysterious mastermind lady watch over him through her crystal ball. And that's how Season 1 of Isekai Cheat Magician comes to an end.